Hi, everyone. Welcome back to NVI's YouTube channel and our Spotlight series. My name is Paige, and I'm partnering with Nimesh and Kate to interview nonviolent advocates for this series. Today, I have the pleasure to interview Jamie Margolin. Jamie is the co-founder of 0 Hour, a youth-led movement taking action on climate change. She is also the author of Youth to Power and an advocate for queer representation in media through her podcast, Lavender You, and her show, Art Majors. Jamie, thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. Would you like to introduce yourself further and expand a bit more on your advocacy?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Jamie Margolin. I'm a film student at NYU and soon to be hopefully filmmaker and climate justice advocate. I've been in the movement since I was 14 years old, so it's been a long time. And honestly, right now I see my role in the movement shifting, and as the world is shifting. And yeah, I'm excited to talk to you just about everything.
Great. Thank you so much. During this interview, I want to talk about 3 important aspects of your activism. So we'll talk about action on climate change, the role of youth in social movements, and queer representation in media. To begin, let's talk about 0 Hour and the need for climate action. As part of 0 Hour, how did that all come together, and what is your platform on climate change?
Well, 0 Hour came together in the summer of 2017. So this was long before like the school strike for climate movement got big, or Greta Thunberg was a known person, or kind of the whole modern youth climate apparatus was really in place. And there was a lot of climate justice organizing going on, obviously, but I didn't really see a lot of youth mobilization to the scale that I had dreamed of and that I hoped would be possible. In 2017, there was like a combination of just climate disaster after climate disaster. There was Hurricane Maria, Hurricane Harvey. There was just the increased temperatures. There was a wildfires that blew smoke all over the Pacific Northwest, where I grew up. And so growing up in Seattle, I had never experienced any sort of wildfire season whatsoever. That's not very natural for us up up north. And then suddenly the entire city had smog so bad that we were getting alerts that our air quality was worse than Beijing, China on a bad day, which just really shows you how intensely like the sky was red. That's not normal. And so all of these things happened. And now I had been community organizing in Seattle for about a little under a year. At that point, I was organizing since I was 14. At that age, I was 15. And I just really wanted to take the action a step further. I felt like the work that I was doing around my community, like there wasn't a lot of urgency. There wasn't a lot of media attention. There wasn't a lot of like a frenzy in the sense of real urgency towards the climate crisis. I felt like if this is the end of the world, why is it not getting more attention? Like, why is this just something that a couple people are doing in the background and something that isn't? Why is this not in the headlines every day? Why is the media not covering the climate crisis every day? If it truly is what it is, which it is, then wouldn't that be relevant to every single issue on Earth? So I posted online that summer that I was going to start a youth climate march. I asked who's with me, and I got responses from different people from around the country. And we came together and started 0 Hour. And through the summer of 2017 to the summer of 2018, we organized the youth climate marches that took place in 25 cities around the world, and helped mobilize as many people as possible for the climate crisis. Well, not for the climate crisis, to stop the climate crisis. We were about, at that age now, I was like 16 when the marches happened in 2018. So 15, 16, 17 was like the ages of everyone. It was so much work. And the main thing that we were demanding was no fossil fuel money. If you want to look at a society and see what their priorities are, follow the money. What are they spending money on? Because that's what they care about, because that's where the resources are going. And all the money and resources, well, not all of them, but if you look at where money and resources are going, it's the fossil fuel industry. It's if you look at who so many of our politicians are funded by, it's the fossil fuel industry. So how are we even going to begin to pretend like we can take any sort of climate action without taking out the influence, essentially the puppeteer marionette string hands of the fossil fuel industry out of our government? So we had a lobby day it was 3 days of action: a lobby day, an art build where we kind of rallied up people and built signs and art for the protest, and then the actual protest. These were 3 days of action in a row. On the lobby day, we met with 50 members of, well, it was 47, almost 50 members of the Senate. Delivered them our demands and actually informed them that we were going to be marching, and told them, this is why we're going to be marching. This is the action that we want to take. And then 0 Hour and the movement has just continued to grow from there. A couple weeks after the Youth Climate March, Greta Thunberg started striking, and then Fridays for Future really blew up. And then we continued our mobilizations and actions, and the rest is history. So that's really how 0 Hour got its start. And right now, as it continues to be, as it was before and as it is right now, beyond just vaguely being people fighting for climate justice, one of the core demands is getting fossil fuel money out of politics. So right now we spend $11 million. Well, our government spends $11 million every single minute to the fossil fuel industry. So for example, when people keep saying, we aren't taking climate action, there's inaction on the climate crisis, the government is taking inaction or is not taking action, that is not accurate, because the government is very much taking action, just in the complete opposite direction to where we want the action to be happening in. So $11 million a minute are going into the pockets of the fossil fuel industry by our government to fund our own destruction. So we're actively funding our own destruction. So one of our the main things that we're advocating for is just getting fossil fuel money out of everything, because there's no way that we're going to be able to get ourselves out of this mess if the fossil fuel industry is essentially funding our society, and if our government is funding them.
I agree. And I think that's a really big issue. Is this part of, I know you're working with Our Children's Trust. Is this part of your lawsuit against the federal government?
No. So actually, to clarify with the lawsuit that I'm a part of is not with the federal government. I'm a part of the lawsuit suing the state of Washington. And then there is the federal lawsuit as well. Both of those lawsuits have been essentially thrown out by in different ways by the government. So just to go back, for those who don't know what Our Children's Trust is, it's a nonprofit that helps young people sue the government for their continued, again, not climate inaction, but action in the wrong direction, continued destruction of our lives, futures, everything. The main argument being that we have a fundamental right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness under the Constitution. And there are many lawsuits happening. There's one on the federal level that was dismissed. And then there is the one that I was a plaintiff on, is the one on the Washington state level, suing the state of Washington specifically, which the government has also tried to get rid of.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that. How would you say that nonviolent activism is related to your goals? I know you talked about participating in marches, making posters, and advocating in Washington.
Well, I mean, it's a central philosophy that I follow and study, like the whole inspiration, really. If you look at the inspiration for the youth climate marches, is I was inspired by the No Dakota Access Pipeline movement, as well as the children's marches of the 60s and the civil rights movement, but also the No Dakota Access Pipeline protests, which were happening only, I think, a year before our little, even they were still going up to then. So that philosophy, training methods, etc. before me. So that's just always what I followed, because those are the people, there's a long line of action. It didn't start very recently. People have been mobilizing and taking action for the environment and for human rights for years and years and years and years. And so I look to the people who have done it in the past or who have done it long before me and get my knowledge and understanding from them. And those are the tactics that they use.
That's great. I think in a lot of what you described, it's about bettering the lives of other people and preventing action that's done against people to worsen their lives in some aspect. In particular, with climate change, not taking action to protect our environment and preserve it. So I think it's, I think in a way it's really nicely related, because with nonviolent movement, you won't be able to solve violence against other people through violent actions, coming back to it. So I really admire the nonviolent activism that Zero Hour has done and that you've participated in on your own. How do you feel? What is your perspective on climate action right now? As you know, being a longtime advocate for it, now as you've been there for a while. I know there are some people who are part of a new movement called the Climate Positive Movement, which is, if some people don't know, it's about maintaining hope in our environment and promoting people to take individual actions in order to protect it. While some people might, there are other climate activists who view that right now there's not that much change that's being done, and that a lot of it is done, as we kind of talked about, being fueled by politicians who are funded by these fossil fuel companies, and that our leaders aren't taking enough action in order to create change. So what's your perspective on that?
Well, my perspective is honesty. Like, I don't like to say things that aren't true. So I can't come on here and just be like, yeah, we're going to be totally fine. And I totally believe we're going to make it out like perfectly okay. We got this. It's like, I cannot say that. The thing that I've learned in my over time, since I was 14, being in this movement, and now having just turned 20. And this relates back to a short film I made recently called Growing Up at the End of the World. I feel lately I've been feeling this growing, it's not climate doom, it's not acceptance of destruction, but it is sort of an in-between from, not laying down and being like, we can't do anything, let's all just accept defeat and oh, well, you win, fossil fuel industry, like not going there, but also not lying to ourselves and being like, we can solve climate change. Well, or we can prevent climate change. Well, climate change is here. Look at the tornadoes. Look at all of the deaths and destruction that's already. Lie to people and be like, yay, everything's going to be perfectly fine. We can solve climate change or prevent the climate crisis. The climate crisis is here. It has been here. It's already causing destruction. But I also don't want to be the type who's just like, well, everything is pointless, so just lay down and party at the end of the world and accept defeat. No, there's a solid in between that I've been grappling with, which is, here's the truth. We are not just not taking climate action, we are actively funding our destruction, actively going in the opposite direction of where we need to be going. The destruction is actively happening. People are actively dying. The crisis is here, and it would be disrespectful and what's the word? Well, it would just be untrue and disrespectful of the people who have already died, of the people who are already losing everything to it, to pretend like it's less than it is, to pretend like it's not as severe as it is, to play it down. That's careless. And for me, I guess it's difficult because I look at the science and it's so easy to feel this sense of grief. I've been grappling a lot myself with ecological grief, of just kind of, there has to be a level of acceptance of where we're at, because we're already in a bad place. It's not like, oh, I worry that we're going to get to a bad place. We are. So I've been grappling with a lot of that grief, and trying to find a mix between acknowledging what is already lost and also still fighting to protect what we still can, the people we still can, and being the hope that we want to see in the world. Because for me, back when I was 14, 15, 16, 17, I was relating to the environmental movement in a very unhealthy way. I was essentially, I felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulders. I was giving everything to the movement. I was engaging with it in such an unhealthy way. I was draining myself for the movement and living 100% for the future. I was living 100% for the cause. I wasn't me. I wasn't Jamie. I wasn't my own person who got to have fun or got to have my own personal life moments, dreams, etc. I was just a vessel for the cause. I essentially completely disregarded everything because I'm like, this is so important and it's so urgent. I have to work full time on this, no pay, everything. I have to devote every single hour to the movement. I felt like Atlas. And I know a lot of people relate to the movement in that way because it feels so severe, and you look around and the action, well, it doesn't just feel so severe, it is so severe. And you look around and you see how much we're moving in the opposite direction of where we need to be going in. You feel like I have to stop everything, but then that leads to immense burnout. And then you realize that even what I've realized, and this is how I've shifted my relationship with organizing and with the movement as in general, is that even if I did work 24 hours a day, even though I was somehow a work robot that could work 24 hours a day and give everything to the movement, it still wouldn't solve everything. It still wouldn't change everything. I can do my part, but in the end, the world isn't on any individual shoulder, and there is a lot out of our control. And there is prioritization of not living like the destruction we're creating, essentially. So I was living like the destruction that I was creating. I was living that very hyper capitalistic, hyper workaholic, I have to do everything all the time, more, essentially mindset that got us into this crisis in the first place. So what has helped me both enjoy the current moment, because like, for example, this winter is the coldest winter we're ever going to get. This summer is going to be the coolest summer we're ever going to get going forward. Like the climate crisis is going to keep worsening. There will be things that will keep getting worse, and we do have to kind of enjoy what we have and live in the moment to some degree, or at least just not give everything for an uncertain future, or for a future in general. The future is always uncertain. So taking time in nature, spending time actually in the places that we're fighting to protect, spending time, having off time, just living your life, just not being absolutely consumed by the work 24/7, acknowledging that the weight of the world isn't on our shoulders, and having those moments where you just kind of live life day to day and kind of let the organizer, activist part of yourself go and just be, is super crucial. So I know that was a super long, I just have so many thoughts on this issue because I've been grappling with both having hope and having no hope, essentially, at the same time, kind of grappling with the truth of the crisis, but also humans can't live hopelessly. We need to keep going. And so I feel like there's a stubborn little part of me that even seeing all the science and everything is just like, there has to be some way we make it through. I don't know how. I hold on, but I also live in the moment and acknowledge what's happening. And just, we have to do the best to prevent any future damage, protect everything we can now, acknowledge the damage done, and keep moving forward.
I think that's great. Thank you so much for going into that. I love it. I think almost in a way too, you've been able to find a balance between not being totally caught up in the activism and losing yourself within it, to, hopefully finding a better balance now where you can enjoy the nature and celebrate it that way, but then also pursue your own goals as an individual while also staying an activist. Would you recommend this kind of balance for activists out there, youth activists especially, who might be in school, might have other responsibilities that they're dealing with?
I recommend balance for everyone because it's simply not healthy. It's simply not healthy to give everything to something and to essentially not acknowledge your own humanity, when to treat yourself like a robot, or to treat yourself as like a one-faceted thing, like I take action for the climate and that is the one thing I am and do. That's just not healthy. And it's important for us to focus on being good siblings or girlfriends or boyfriends or friends or children, parents, or whatever it is that you are in relation to those around you. And if you like art, if you like to dance, if you like other things, don't give everything for this movement, because the future is very uncertain. You have to live in the present and you have to find the joy now. That doesn't even just go for the climate crisis. That just goes for anything. It's just so important to be in the present, because that's where technically neither the past or the future is anything that we will experience. We're always here. So it's important for you, especially as a young person, to not fully live for the future, be like, I'll throw everything away now and enjoy myself later. Those pockets of enjoyment and just being yourself are actually crucial to keep you in the fight, because we're in this for the long run. There is no day where we are like, oh, climate change is done. That sucked. We're good now. Let's go back to everything. This is a fight of our lifetimes, and we will be fighting this our entire lives. I'm sorry. That is just, whether it be, now we don't have our entire lives to stop everything, but we will be dealing with climate impacts, climate recovery, everything like that for our entire lives. So it is key for your survival in the movement, and just your survival as yourself, your soul, just as a person, to be happy, to be okay, that you find that balance. It's the only way to be, because there is no sprint. This is a marathon. And you have to find a way to not burn out, because when you burn out, you start to resent the cause itself, and then you just don't give anything to the movement, and then you're in a worse off place than before, because this movement needs all of us, and suddenly there's less people because everyone has burnt themselves out. And to anyone who's like, I won't burn out, I'm strong, that won't happen to me, that was me several times when I was a teenager. I was like, I won't burn out, I can do everything all the time. But if you ignore your own health and your own well-being, it catches up to you, and then you have no motivation or interest to engage with the movement at all. And that is so much worse than just taking breaks when you can.
Yeah, that's a really great perspective, I have to feel like. And I think that creates really sustainable change. Like you said, it's a marathon, not just a sprint. So it kind of keeps people more engaged.
We have to be sustainable in our fight for sustainability. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. Going off of kind of youth's role in social movements, you published a really great book, and I got the opportunity to read it recently, called Youth to Power, where you provide all these amazing resources for youth to basically, do community organizing, to how they would write op-eds. What role and what do you think is the importance of youth being part of this movement, rather than activists from previous generations, or just older generations in general?
I don't believe in pitting generations against each other in any way. And as I've grown up in this movement, because essentially the movement has raised me, I was in it from 14 to now, and I'm 20. So this movement has raised me for many formative years. And the thing that I've realized is, well, we can't define ourselves by age. Age fades. You either age or you die. Those are your options. Like, you will get older. No one stays a youth forever. And I think that something that I've seen that I have been weary of. So this started out as like empowering. Well, my involvement and my push for youth organizing, and why I centered youth, was because I was seeing this lack within the movement, where there was this more attention that needed to be paid attention to youth in addition to everyone else. It wasn't only the youth talk, it was let's talk as well. And then everything blew up. The media started to pay attention to it. Suddenly something that was really uncool that I did, that was like, oh God, Jamie's doing that. You're going to Olympia to testify for a bill hearing for the climate. What? That's weird. To like youth climate activists on magazine covers and everything like that. And suddenly it's almost like trendy in a sense, or it's cool. And I'm not mad that it is now something that is popular to do. The more people in this, the better. But I think that the dangerous thing that has happened is that instead of the media and corporations and leaders listening to what the youth had to say, they were instead focusing on how cute it was that we were saying it and commodifying that. So instead of listening to end all fossil fuel subsidies and have the headline be, these organizers demand end all fossil fuel subsidies, and the pressure and the conversation being about the policy, and it ended up being feel-good articles about these cool kids changing the world. Look at how these cool prodigies are. Look how cute they are. Follow their Instagrams, their climate influencers. Look at them. And it became all about the people. And it became all about like essentially the climate child stars, which I was totally a part of. And I have no issue with like more and more young people raising their voices, taking action. That's what Youth to Power, that's what I wrote it for. That's what my whole essentially career up to this point has been in the movement and work has been. But I've noticed that the story in the media and with people has been more about how cute it is that the youth are doing something. Look at these prodigies, look at these, people, look at them in ads, look at them in this, look at that, look at their Instagrams, everything like that. Then it has been about what we're actually saying and advocating for. And it cheapens the message when it's just, we need more youth in different spaces, or listen to the youth. And it's just vague things like youth. And it becomes like, okay, but like, what are we actually saying? We have situations then where people in their late 20s are being like, as a youth, they'll be like, you know what I mean? That something is starting to become a bit tokenified or commodified or fetishized. I don't know the right word, but when people who aren't really even youth are now like, ooh, this is profitable to associate with. I'm like 27 and I'm a youth or something like that. And it becomes this thing where when people say, what do we want? What are our demands? It's like more youth in spaces instead of actual climate demands. Then you see that something that started out as empowering a generation became sort of like a media circus, or sort of like, I don't know, sort of like a reason to not actually pay attention to the climate policy and instead create feel good fluff stories about, look how inspiring this activist, and look how inspiring this activist is, or look how cool this kid is. But then what this said inspiring kids or activists are saying is being ignored. And then the motivation and the push and the pressure becomes like, look at all these cool kids and how cool they are and all these photo ops. And you don't even know what actual climate policy we're fighting for. It's just check out all these cool kids in a picture together. Look how inspiring they are. OMG, the youth climate activists. And I'm like, what are the policies? What are we advocating? Like, it's almost like the message becomes lost. So intergenerational organizing is how it's been done since the beginning. And it's the way to go. There is nothing special or superior about Generation Z. I think that there is so much over praise for Generation Z as like, we're better than everyone else. No, we're not. I mean, just the things that there are people in older generations who are taking immense action as well. We just have social media and the internet and all of these ways to easily, highlight and captivate and capture the work that's being done, so we can document the great things that we're doing a lot better than previous generations could. But we're not better than any generation at all. And there are people in Gen Z causing immense issues, and there are people in Gen Z doing like great work. Like I think the thing is that people are so desperate for hope, especially adults are so desperate for hope in this hopeless world, that they're like, oh God, this new generation of kids, you guys are the hope. Like you got this. They are Gen Z. And then it becomes this sort of monolith of like, every single person born between this date to this date is automatically a hero and saving us all. Like, that's not true. There are so many elders who've been in this movement who have sacrificed so much more than I ever have for this, and who I think are much more of activists than I ever was, who have been in this for decades before me, and I don't even know their names, So I think what needs to happen is, I think that we've gone a little too far, as I've seen, in the like over glorifying and centering age and everything. And we need to just focus on the issue now, collectively, making sure that youth are heard, making sure that our elders are heard, making sure that people in their middle ages are heard, everyone is heard, because then we're also silencing the experts and people with like degrees in this stuff. Because what happens is the media gets more like clicks or things like that, with only the youth activists. And then, they just want to bring them on. But what about the scientific experts? What about what about the organizers who have been in this for a while? That also should be popular. That also should be like, ooh, let's listen to them too.
That's a really good point. And it's really interesting. I feel like each generation can bring something unique to the table. Do you see this as kind of a downside with social media? Is that, when we use this platform, and a lot of us, consume social media on a daily basis. Some people get a lot of their information just from social media. Do you see this as a kind of a downside to using social media as an activist platform, or is there maybe some different upsides to it that offset it?
In order to properly engage with social media as a movement, we have to actually honestly look at what it is and where it comes from and how it works. The truth is, and I encourage everyone to watch The Social Dilemma and kind of understand how it works, is that social media, okay, let's go back to evolution. I promise you this has a point. Humans are herd animals. So exterior gratification and community is built into us evolutionarily as how we survived. If we were ostracized from like the group or the tribe in early Paleolithic times, that's death. You know, we were built to survive together. So our brains are hardwired to want connection, to want acceptance, to want to be liked. It's survival hardwired in our brains. So when we are ostracized, publicly shamed, or left out, the reason why it hurts so badly, and I encourage everyone to read up on this science. It's really fascinating to understand what's happening. The reason why it hurts so badly and why we crave popularity so much is because we're hardwired to. And social media companies have found a way to essentially hack our biology and brain science and turn that into a commodity. Our want for attention, our want for connection, our want for acceptance, our evolutionary, especially for young people. Now the brain isn't fully formed until we're 25. So until we're 25, the brain is still growing essentially. And evolutionarily in the past, when people were dying at earlier ages, people around their teenage years, this would be the time where people would essentially reproduce because everyone would be dying earlier. So our brains were hardwired to want us to essentially interact with our peer groups and care about what our peers think in our like teenage years. So that's why you find teenagers and young people and people in their early 20s way focused on, oh my God, what does everyone think of me? What does everyone think of me? What do my peers think of me? As opposed to like 40-year-olds who are like, my peers, like, you know, you don't really see that peer pressure with like 50-year-olds. It's more amongst that age because that's when our brain is hardwired to really care what our age group thinks. So I'm just laying out that neuroscience as a base for what the social media companies are based on. When you get a like or when you get a follow, it centers a dopamine system in your brain. It literally, because it means human connection. The dopamine is your brain's reward system. And all of these social media companies with the likes, with the follows, with the endless scroll, that's like a slot machine that is made off of a casino slot machine, is how these, you know, you swipe and then it never ends. But there could be a reward. There could be a like. There could be a comment. You could have connected with someone cool. Someone could have shared your post. So there's like, ooh, that reward system. Dopamine is the anticipation chemical. This is how these social media platforms are so addictive and are hardwiring people to really, even if, and then there's the algorithms that specifically curate content to enrage us. So the basis that I'm forming is we're evolutionarily hardwired to crave acceptance, and especially around the teenage years, especially around the formative years. Social media is addictive biologically. It's not just like, oh, I just spend a lot of time on Insta. Like it's actually chemically addictive in the sense, well, not like a literal drug, but you can get digital addiction is a real addiction is what I'm saying. And actually resembles gambling addiction. If you look at like the slot machine, that is how these products were designed to be addictive. Then you say that we see how these products are paid for because they're free and people don't like pay to get a Facebook or pay to get Instagram or something. The way that they make money is ads and eyeballs on ads. So it's an attention economy. So the product is us. The product is our attention. And so the way that these companies make money is to keep us on them for as long as physically possible. That's why they make them so addictive, because they make money through our attention, our time and ourselves and our attention is the product. And that's the social dilemma. I encourage everyone to watch that documentary. And so when this is how it's set up, what keeps people? Drama, hate, false news, all of these things keeps people a lot more engaged. Rage keeps you a lot more engaged than if you're just passively looking at puppies like, oh, that's cute, whatever, you'll put that down. So fake news actually spreads 6 times more. I think someone can correct me if I'm wrong on this statistic, because I keep forgetting if it's 6 or 8 times more, but false news stories spread way more on Twitter than true news stories. The algorithms push up things that make us angry, that make us infuriated, and they make us more combative and mean to each other and dehumanize each other, because that's how we spend more and more and more time. So it's eroding the fabric of our society, honestly. And there are positive ways to interact with these if you know what is happening. So I'm saying that, and I encourage everyone to research how the social media companies work, how much money these social media moguls make, and how they're destabilizing democracies around the world and causing all of this harm, increasing suicide rates, increasing anxiety, making just people overall worse to each other, increasing the spreading of false information, false stories, cyberbullying, public shaming, everything. I'd encourage everyone to know that about these platforms, so that you're not engaging with them as just a consumer and getting hooked to the next game. Oh, I want more followers. I want to be a really popular activist. I want social media. I want this, I want that. And being more focused on kind of understanding how these tools work so you can engage with it more mindfully is really important. So for me, I have stepped back from engaging with social media in the way that I have before. I used to be super hooked on it. I used to be really addicted. I used to spend a lot of time on it. I used to fall into time rabbit holes, and it just used to be a really unhealthy relationship. And I've just gotten so tired of it's just spewing of endless content and trying to be relevant. And it's just words out there all the time, just content. I don't want to just be a part of that. So I've pulled back and personally decided that if I have something really important to say, if I make a film that I think is really good, or I have a message that I really want to share of something that I actually have the authority to speak on, I will, but I'm not going to comment on everything or scroll every day or even be on it every day anymore, because I just don't, for my own life, and just just after learning so much about these platforms and how they are eroding democracies and how they are hurting so many people, I don't want to engage with them as a consumer that gives my time and attention to this energy economy. I want to use them as tools and not be essentially beholden to them or addicted to them, and have more distance. So yeah, that's again a long rant, but I've just been thinking a lot about social media and changing my relationship to it. And that's what I do now. I'm not acting superior to anyone who engages with it a lot or anything. You're playing a part of the system when you're, you think you're doing something as an activist, and you realize that, you're actually playing into something. So yeah, just to be mindful.
I think that's a great point. I've had to do the same with my social media. For me, it was just like lots of scrolling. It was a distraction, a way to cope with any stress, just a way to look through content. So, sometimes it'd make me laugh. Sometimes it'd just distract me from anything I was dealing with. And it's just not healthy in some ways. In some ways, I think there's content that you can consume that can be good, like you said. And if you have a healthy relationship with social media, then that's good. But it's very easy to fall down the rabbit hole of just endless scrolling, locking yourself in an echo chamber where you just hear the same perspectives and you're not really hearing any new voices. And then, as you said, with fake news, that's been a huge issue. I mean, in the 2016 presidential election in the United States, that was a huge issue in messing with the elections, that fake news stories were going around on Facebook that were saying very particular things about Hillary Clinton or Democrats in order to get more support for Republicans. And it manipulated people. It's very manipulative. And in a way, it's almost scary when it comes to the user for social media, because it kind of just locks you in this place. And like you said, people can be very bitter because in a way, it's just over media. Usually won't affect your real life. So cyberbullying happens. In an activist way, I even think that some ways people will use social media to do passive activism, and you can let me know your perspective on this, but just doing something like sharing, again, like something like, here are these amazing youth activists, or with the BLM movement, there was at one point where people were posting like black pictures, just completely black screens.
Yeah, the black square, and then it would, yeah,
which ended up being really problematic because it was like suppressing a lot of important information going around about BLM. And in the end, people weren't actually acting. They were like, oh, I shared this on social media, put BLM in my bio, I'm great, like this is the amount I need to do. And it isn't enough. And I bet the same thing kind of goes around with climate change. Like if you share something, that's great, but in a way, maybe it keeps people from acting all the way.
It also makes people think.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that cyberbullying is activism. So there are like two big things that I think that you can fall into, like very easily, like false and damaging roads. This is what I mean by the way they make it addicted and they hack our brains and everything like that. I'm not saying that in a woo conspiracy theory way. I'm saying that like this is the actual science. There are really unhealthy ways, especially that young people can interact with these, because our brains are really, really, really driven to care about what peers think of us. A, it's how humans survived, and B, that specific age group, we really care about what our peers think about us. Like it's hardwired a lot. That's why self-consciousness is such a huge thing in teenagers. So what do you want to do? You want your peers to think that you're super woke and up to date with everything and you care and everything like that. And you want to make sure that your peers know that you're not, doing anything problematic or not like supporting anything wrong. Like you're very much with what everyone else is saying all the time. That's like the stress of social media that I feel like a lot of people, especially in hyper progressive spaces, hyper leftist spaces, activist spaces, really deal with. And it takes away people's critical thinking skills, and they just live in this group think because there's a fear of being ostracized, of being deemed an enemy of the cause, and then being, shamed publicly, losing community. That can mean a lot for people. Losing that online community, especially for marginalized groups, can be really, really stressful. I encourage everyone to watch this video called Canceled by ContraPoints to kind of learn more about how like that group ostracization impacts people in marginalized groups, like the social media shaming and everything like that. And it kind of creates, I think the best way to put it is, because of everything I said before of the science and how it encourages hostility and everything like that, there's this like herd think where it's like everyone's posting their support of this. I'm going to post my support of this so I can show that I'm a good person and I'm, here's my black square because everyone else is doing it. Here's my hashtag. Oh, everyone is shaming this person. This person is bad. Okay, I don't want to be seen as being on the wrong side of anything. I'm not going to do my research or think critically or stay out of it or anything. I got to be a part of this. I got to show that I too disavow the wrong human. This and that, it's this kind of jumping, and there's so many mistakes and so many things made with that that can really destroy a lot of people, causes. It makes it so it's very unappealing for people who really agree with leftist causes and really agree with the movement, but are so disgusted by this like maliciousness almost that has become this glee that everyone takes in tearing each other down, this schadenfreude, this herd think of post this because everyone says that this is what we should care about, and I too am enraged by this, and I agree with like the complete fascism almost of it. It essentially makes a lot of people really turned off or really scared, or people who live in fear of ostracization or social of social shaming or anything like that, because our brains are so hard, like being publicly shamed, being publicly ostracized feels life-threatening in your brain. So it can create really dangerous situations that have created, there have been people in trigger warning for discussions of suicide, people in marginalized communities who have experienced this have committed suicide because of intense amounts of cyberbullying from their own community, not from the other side, not from people outside of it, from their own community. There have been times where I know people and have had experiences and seen people who've had experience where the vitriol from within can really cause people to, it can put people in really, really, really dark places. And I've seen people in really dark places because of it. And thankfully, those people have pulled through or are still around today. But there are some people who don't. And you end up being the person who posts mental health awareness, suicide month, whatever. I'm so woke about this. And you end up being a part of a system because these social media algorithms encourage and reward. The reason why people partake in these things is because you get those likes, those retweets, when you're taking part in an outrage about something or this, you get a lot of likes, you get a lot of retweets, you get a lot of clout, especially in that age group where that sort of peer, you're validated, you're part of something, you're in, I'm part of something, I'm making a difference. Then you don't even realize what you're doing to someone or to a cause or spreading something false, or, you can very easily do the exact opposite thing that you're advocating for. Don't become a pawn of these things that are supposed to be tools. Social media is supposed to be a tool, but then it ends up bringing out the worst in us and just making it about a fear and a desperation to fit in and be right all the time. And then it's not really about activism. It's just about keeping up with the Joneses. And it's about, everyone's posting their black square. Here's my black square. I'm not racist. Everyone hates this person. Well, I don't know. I haven't done my research, but I'm going to do this because that's what everyone's doing. And then, it puts people and society in just a really ugly place that I don't think we want to be. And I don't think is making the world a better place at all.
I agree. It doesn't allow for people just to be people, to make mistakes, to not show a perfect image that goes along with popular crowds, or even just does everything how people see should be right. And it can be just very toxic. And I can definitely see that where that could come in with activism if, people are either passively being a part of it, or if in some activist groups, if it's never really enough what you're doing, if you're not active in social media enough, or if you're not automatically on whatever person we're supposed to hate next, or whatever hashtag we're supposed to be posting about, then you are not progressive enough. And exactly. In a way, and it prevents like this real work, like you were talking about, that happening is like the message and the intention behind it gets clouded by all this extra stuff that in the end it might be spreading the message in the beginning, but then it stops. It just becomes this environment, which is a real shame.
And then it discourages others from getting involved, because people on the outside who might be like, ooh, I really believe in this cause, see what's going on, and are like, not that much, or they're like, I don't want to engage with you people. And then it kind of isolates you.
It really
turns people off.
Mm-hmm. I've noticed being able to explore your social media pages, you've been able to post a lot of your short film work and stuff, and being able to focus that way. I think that's a great strategy for it. And then, I think asking people, setting this up that people are aware of what they're getting into when they sign up for social media, and what systems they can easily fall prey to. The addictive part of it, or being part of, the beneficial parts of social media, where it might connect you with new people. You might learn some new things, and you might be able to keep up with your friends and stuff, family that you don't see very often. So in order to try to keep those beneficial ideas, I think having a really healthy social media relationship is good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And for your own mental health too, because it is not natural to crave the approval of thousands and to have thousands or more or less, or a lot of people looking at your life, to live your life as a performance for others. That can be really draining. That can really that can just suck a lot out of you. And then you're just like, where did my day go? Like, just for your own health, happiness, etc. Just, I sound like an old lady, like, get off the phones, children. All movement work needs to start, be the change you want to see. So don't engage in like unhealthy and addictive behaviors with your consumption.
I agree. Thank you so much, Jamie, for this really useful conversation. Is there anything else you would want to share while we're wrapping up? Anything that you think our audience could hear, or youth in general?
The balance, take, like I said, take the action that you can, put your skills and your efforts to good use for a cause you care about, but also take some time to live in the moment, take some time to be you, take some time offline, take some time in nature, just in general. If you can, please go out in nature as much as possible. For those who have access, there are going to be almost 8 billion people now on Earth. Like, each of us, we're a speck, and we're just doing we're living, our lives are like, little flashes in the grand scheme of time and everything. So acknowledge, like, understand yourself in the relation to the earth and people, and acknowledge that you can only do so much. So do the best that you can, but trust that others are doing stuff too. And then live your own life, because it's precious and it's fleeting, and it's the only one we've got, I guess, if that's what you believe. I don't know what different people believe about the grand things in life. I don't want to get into that, but don't sacrifice everything for the cause, is what I'm saying, and try to put things into context and just live good lives. I know that's such vague advice, but that's just what's been on my mind a lot lately, is a more holistic approach to organizing, activism, just a more holistic approach to everything, a more healthy approach to everything, simply because, I can't keep going like I've been going when I was a teenager. The way I relate to activism, the way I relate to organizing, the way I relate to the cause, it's different now. And I'm trying to spend more time living my own life in balance with everything, and working on, for me, my passion and purpose is I'm a storyteller. If you boil it down, Jamie, tell me in one word, who are you? I'm a storyteller. And so I right now, my medium that I explore that through is film. And that's my love. I love film and animation so much. And so I'm giving myself that time to, I think the way I personally am going to relate to the movement more is as an artist. So I can like kind of express these things and what I've learned in my years in it. And also continuing to take action. So I'd also encourage you to think of what talents and skills you have, or what mediums that you'd like to explore your work in as well, to kind of give you more balance and give you something to work on and enjoy. So whether you like math or science or art or filmmaking or theater or sports or whatever it is, seeing how you can use the things that you love to advocate for the cause so you don't burn out. That's another way to take care of yourself, is making the work joyful, even though it's very unjoyful that we have to fight for our lives. I think just something I've learned over the past year, and just something that is really important, is that we have to protect our joy at all costs. That's so important. So how do you engage with this work in a way, even though it's unfortunate that we even have to fight for our lives, fight against all these issues, that is inherently unjoyful. We don't have to make it completely ugly for us. We can still find joy in it, and we can bring our own. That is part of the fight. That is part of the resilience, is like being happy in spite of it, not like bypassing the actual horrors. If you're in the middle of a tornado, it's not like just smile and be happy. No, but I mean, in general, like through the work, finding pockets of joy while understanding the reality and not overlooking the severity. So those are my last 2 cents. For everyone, thank you so much for listening. If you've made it this far, if you want to read my book, Youth to Power, you can go to www.youthtopowerbook.com. You can read it there, or you can get the audiobook. And if you want to engage with me, I'm Jamie Margolin on all social media platforms. But as we discussed before, I'm not super active there anymore, but you can, send me a message. And when I'm on there, I'll I'll check it out. So thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And thank you again, everyone, for taking this time to watch my interview with Jamie. If you want to learn more about Jamie, Zero Hour, and the other great things she's a part of, check out the links in the description, and I'll be sure to link Youth to Power as well. And thank you, Jamie, for this conversation. I thought it was really inspiring and important. I wish you the best of luck as you continue your schoolwork, continue filmmaking, and continue all of the wonderful activism that you do.
If you think these conversations are important and would like to see them continue, please consider supporting NVI and the work we do by subscribing to this YouTube channel, following us on Twitter and Facebook, and visiting our website. Also, please consider donating to NVI using the link in the description. We appreciate your support and dedication to creating a nonviolent world.